Fundraising is a critical part of building a news organization. Even before launching your first news product, you will likely need some initial funding to get it off the ground. And for a vast majority of news organizations, fundraising is not a one and done, but rather an ongoing effort to strengthen your finances. But what are the most effective fundraising methods? And how can you find the money you need to launch and grow your news organization? I'm Mohit Nihalani from the Google News Initiative, and this video is part of a series to help you build a successful digital revenue model, whether you're an aspiring startup or a traditional publisher working on your digital transition. Other videos in this series discuss determining your revenue models, building your tech stack, launching news products, and other ways to strengthen your news business, all with the goal of operating sustainably. In this video, we will be discussing the fundraising methods we've seen publishers have success with, and we'll share some recommendations and best practices as you start to fundraise for your news organization. If you have the means, investing your own money to launch your news organization can be a great way to get started quickly. In fact, according to our research for Project Oasis, 2/3 of local digital news entrepreneurs in North America are self-funded initially. The benefits of self-funding are that you won't have to spend time pitching to funders, and you can use that time saved to build and refine your product. In addition, if you self-fund, you won't have to give any ownership stake to a third-party investor. Of course, the main downside to self-funding is that it's risky. If your news business fails, it's your money that you lose. That's why we recommend setting clear targets ahead of time by asking yourself questions like, how much are you willing to invest in the business? How long are you willing to work for free without drawing a salary? And what revenue goals do you need to hit to justify your continued and additional investment? Answering these three questions and sticking to your plan can help mitigate the risks of self-funding. If you can't or don't want to self-fund your news organization, there are a number of effective ways to fundraise, including crowdfunding, foundation grants, as well as third-party investments, or funding from your personal network. Let's take a closer look at each of these options. The first fundraising method we'll discuss is crowdfunding, or the process of asking a large group of people to contribute money towards your news product or idea. A crowdfunding campaign can be a great way to build community support and generate excitement for your product. Here are some tips to consider if you choose this route. First, aim to clearly communicate your organization's mission, instead of just the details of the news product. This can help you strike a chord with potential funders, and it will give them a better sense of the reasoning and motivation behind your work. Second, establish credibility with potential donors by laying out your plan. Your plan should articulate the details of your product, the reason it's needed, how you plan to publish it, and importantly, how you plan to fund your long-term ambitions. One effective way to communicate your plan with a wide audience is by making a short video, which outlines your mission and all of these key details. Third, focus on increasing the number of people you engage or get to donate, rather than just the amount of money raised. Building momentum across a broad base of potential supporters can create excitement for your product even before it launches, and will allow you to build your audience through word of mouth. Lastly, consider creating rewards to give people an added incentive to donate, especially on a recurring basis or for larger donation amounts. You have the room to be creative here, such as offering special content, merchandise, or even a form of membership. Larger donors may appreciate you publicly recognizing their support, but be sure to check with them first. Some good examples of crowdfunding include the View from Somewhere podcast that raised over $16,000 through a Kickstarter campaign to tell stories of journalists who have stood up for justice, or Daniel Thompson's GoFundMe fundraiser in Kenosha that raised $45,000. Several popular platforms exist to help you run a crowdfunding campaign, including Indiegogo, Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and Patreon. These platforms also offer guides to successful crowdfunding that you can check out for more ideas. Depending on your country of operation, you may be able to apply for grants from support foundations. Many nonprofit newsrooms in particular successfully availed of funding from foundations to jumpstart their operations or significantly accelerate their growth. For-profit newsrooms may also be able to avail of this funding, but will likely need the help of a fiscal sponsor to do so. Be aware that applying for these grants is typically time-consuming. And in the event that your application is successful, funding will typically have associated usage and reporting requirements. So be sure to have a good understanding of what the grant entails before pursuing it. In seeking a grant, it's helpful to keep a few things in mind. First, to help identify possible foundations, look at news organizations similar to yours and identify their funders. Oftentimes, these funders will want to support other organizations whose values and missions align with their own. And this goes both ways, so be sure your values align with the foundations as well. We also recommend looking for foundations that will not only provide grant money, but will also help develop your organization's capacity and abilities, such as offering coaching and training to support your development. One final tip, you will likely find success initially in cultivating support from local or regional foundations rather than national ones. This can have the dual benefit of helping you strengthen ties with your local communities while also raising revenue. You can investigate whether there are any aggregators out there that map out local funding opportunities in your geography to make identification easier. The final fundraising method we'll discuss is third-party investment, also known as outside investment. This might come from several different sources, including angel investors or venture capital firms, or more likely, from existing contacts in your professional or personal networks. Angel investors are typically less involved in the day-to-day operations of an organization than venture capital firms, but both types of investments typically involve exchanging capital for partial ownership of your organization. These funders will often be willing to provide additional funding if your news organization can demonstrate growth. Because they have a vested interest in your growth, they may be able to provide additional support like coaching and mentoring. Just take care to ensure that your goals are fully aligned. Investors and VCs will have a strong profit motive, which may not be your primary motivation behind launching a news business. Third-party investments can be an effective way to infuse capital quickly. And because you are offering equity, you typically do not have to repay the funds to an investor, though you will have to pay them back by way of future value of business. The main downside of these outside investments is that you dilute your ownership stake in your own business. And depending on how much of the business you sell, you may be giving up some or all of the decision-making power. Regardless of which fundraising method you choose, you will need to create a short presentation or pitch that describes what audience you'll serve, what problem or problems you'll solve for them, and how you plan to monetize your solution. A good pitch should always be clear and concise. Ultimately, you want to communicate who you are, what you're doing, and why it matters. And the key to a good pitch is practice. We recommend you record your pitch and then rewatch it with a critical eye, or practice it with others and ask for feedback. Here's a great resource from the Pointer Institute on how to strengthen your pitch. Of course, you don't have to pick just one fundraising method. We recommend that news organizations of all sizes broaden their outreach for fundraising. To help you prioritize which efforts to pursue first, be sure to research the funding pipeline in your region. How are other news organizations like yours securing funding today? From here, you will be able to identify the most realistic opportunities for yourself. That's all for now on fundraising. But don't forget to take a look at the other videos in this series to help your business thrive. Also be sure to check out Startups Labs if you'd like to work with a cohort of other new startups in a more in-depth coaching program. More information on that and applications can be found on our website, g.co/news initiative. If you have any questions or feedback, you can reach us at contactgni@google.com. Thank you and best of luck as you fundraise for your news organization.